starting in September 2020, I had researched the law already and had issued many rulings, including preliminary injunction and other decisions based on it. And I certainly did not need a landlord-tenant lawyer ranting about it. Now, due to extensive news coverage of the subject trial, passerbys often recognize and confront me on the streets, at parties, in parks, in gymnasiums, in other locations where I have my shirt off. They say, hey, I recognize those nips from an email. I know you. I hereby definitively state that this did not impact my adjudication at all. Judge Engoron is refusing to recuse himself again. He has been the subject of many concerning activities, including very interesting relationship with his law clerk, who had some close ties to Democrats. They were up on the bench together. Allison Greenfield, we remember her name, the judge's GF, short for Greenfield. Alina Abba said that they were passing notes around. Don't know what was in those notes, but we do know that there was a camera that was watching them. And then after Alina Abba made some comments, they moved those cameras around so that nobody could see what was going on. Well, the judge has been the subject of a lot of bias and prejudice and gag orders and a bunch of ridiculous things. And now there's new story and rumors that he was improperly biased by another lawyer in the courtroom to come out with his decision. Now, he was the subject of a recusal motion from the Trump defense, and he is refusing to go again. And so here is the background. We'll take a look at his explanation. But the judge who ordered Trump to pay $454 million says, no, I didn't approach that lawyer. I was accosted. He came at me, and I'm not going anywhere. Trump is appealing this case, as we saw, but he says, I am supremely confident in my ability to serve on this case. Someone spoke with Engoron. Remember, this Bailey fella told CNN, this other attorney, that he spoke with Engoron about the decision. And he says, no, I didn't talk to him. I was just accosted by him. So Engoron is not going to go anywhere. Here is what the order says. From New York Supreme Court, which is their low-level court, Honorable Arthur F., aka the Nip Areola, is here. He says, all right, look, we know Trump has been prosecuted. Trump has already submitted a motion to recuse, saying, dude, you're biased. You had an ex parte conversation, which is not lawful for judges to do, with someone about this case. You didn't disclose it. We found out about it. You need to go. On February 16th, there was a trial. And then we learned that on May 8th, we fast forward just a couple months ago, NBC New York reported that Adam Lightman Bailey is a lawyer with no connection to this case. He showed up on NBC News. He boasted that several weeks before Engoron, the NIP, issued the decision in order, he approached the judge presiding over Trump's civil fraud case to offer unsolicited advice about the law at issue in this case. So this lawyer just went up to the judge. Now, on July 8th, this court so ordered in part defendants to subpoena Bailey, directing him to disclose any documents that might refer to this action. Now, Trump moves for Engoron to recuse himself. He says, for me to recuse myself, or in the alternative, for an evidentiary hearing before some other judge to talk about the potential impact of the decision to meet with this guy. And so he says, okay, here's what happened. Engoron, he's explaining himself. He says, all right, the unsolicited ex parte communication. So here's his excuse. Now, sometime in or about February, several weeks before I issued the post-trial decision, at the end of the business day, says the NIP, I left my robing room. Oh, good. Hopefully he took off his tassels and put his shirt back on. In the courthouse at 60 Center Street and rode an elevator down to the main floor. Now there, on the outskirts of the famous rotunda, Bailey, the lawyer, accosted and started haranguing me about executive law. He did not relay any alleged facts. Oh my gosh. He got accosted and harangued. Now, prior to that time, I considered Bailey a professional acquaintance and a distant friend. His sudden appearance and his vehement speech took me aback, and I simply told him that he was wrong. Now, he trailed after me, still droning on, as I descended the judge's stairs to the street level. I entered my vehicle without saying another word except perhaps goodbye, and I departed. For approximately 3.5 years prior to this unpleasant occurrence, starting in September 2020, I had researched the law already and had issued many rulings, including preliminary injunction and other decisions based on it. And I certainly did not need a landlord-tenant lawyer ranting about it. Oh, hey, landlord-tenant lawyer. lawyers. He's talking smack on you guys. I'm not a landlord-tenant lawyer, but I mean, it would be like, I certainly do not need a criminal defense lawyer telling me about it. Oh, I'd be offended as hell. I'd be like, what did you just say about me, punk? What kind of judge are you? It's like, okay, we actually do work. Landlord-tenant lawyers actually do work. All right, not like this judge. Anyways, I did not initiate, welcome, or encourage, or engage in, or learn from, much less enjoy Bailey's tirade. Now, I did not base any part of any of my rulings on it, as Bailey has outlandishly, mistakenly, and defamatorily claimed. Are you going to sue him, Judge? Maybe you should. The entire 90-second incident, after 3.5 years of studying and being immersed in the law, to use the vernacular, is a nothing burger. I would have forgotten all about it by now had Bailey not attempted to burnish his reputation as someone who could influence judges, which would be unethical and possibly illegal, but of which Bailey nonetheless publicly boasts. Now, due to extensive news coverage of the subject trial, passerbys often recognize and confront me on the streets, at parties, in parks, in gymnasiums, in other locations where I have my shirt off. They say, hey, I recognize those nips from an email. I know you. In parks, in restaurants, and on public transportation. This dude is so in love with himself. I get recognized everywhere. I'm so important. I go to parties. I go to parks, baby. I go to restaurants. What a weirdo. Now, he says, of course, the irony here is that Trump, whose position is that Bailey was ostensibly promoting, is moving for me to recuse myself. And plaintiff, whose position is that Bailey was ostensibly controverting, opposes the motion. This suggests that Trump are not motivated by ethical concerns, but they seek an opportunity to reverse the trajectory in the outcome of this case. Well, they think that you're a conflicted, unethical judge. Judge, that's the point. Sometimes their unsolicited words are complimentary. Sometimes they're derogatory, like when we call him Areola. Never do they affect my rulings. Now, as with my forced encounter with Bailey, I feel no need to report these fleeting incidents. And so Trump's purports to rely on the rule that a judge may consult with an expert, but I did not consult with Bailey, and I certainly do not consider him an expert. Man, Bailey is getting thrown under the bus. Hey, if Bailey has anything else to say about this, would be interesting. So he goes through the arguments, he goes through a bunch of cases. Okay, so this is something that any basically lawyer can do. A lot of judges and attorneys think this is like a fancy thing that you can do. They're like, watch this. I'm gonna go find a bunch of cases that make my case for me, right? And they find all these cases. Now, this is just a little, like, it's kind of like a magic trick, like anybody can do it. Any lawyer can do it. Just find a bunch of cases that are on point with your case. Unless it's a really bad, like a bad case or bad point. You're like, is there a case law that says it's okay to intentionally murder somebody or something like that? And you're like, not really. No, it's not gonna work for you. Unless it's something like a self-defense or something, right? That gets very complicated. It's not a good example. So matter of George, matter of Levine, matter of all this, blah, 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 just copy and pasting, dumping a bunch of stuff. And he's going to say, so it's settled. I don't need to recuse myself. It's up to me and my conscience to determine whether this 90-second unsolicited diatribe about the law, in which I'm fully already familiar with, by some non-party and non-expert landlord-tenant lawyer who does like evictions, I hereby definitively state that this did not impact my adjudication at all. And so a judge is not required to disclose this, and I've been presiding over this, and this docket has over 2,600 separate entries. I've reviewed tons of stuff, and I am supremely confident in my ability to serve, as I always have, impartially. And so we're also not going to have a hearing either. We're not going to have this come in here. Trump wants cases to have an evidentiary hearing, but we're not going to give Bailey, who is accused of the wrongdoing, he would only have standing to request that. You don't have the standing to request that hearing. And so therefore, Trump's request is denied. The Areola Nip judge, who sends unsolicited #bonus torso photos to his newsletter subscribers. Ugh, I wonder who those people are. Anyways, they are going to have more Arthur Engoron. The appeal will continue in the New York Court of Appeals, and we'll be here continuing to cover it. But Engoron is being very Engoron-y about all this. He's probably going to get recognized again and be very proud of himself in the aftermath.